Bad news, your wife is broken. Good news, so are you. She is generally and specifically broken, but how you love her through that brokenness will either break or make your marriage. Today we interview author and podcaster Heidi St. about a woman's perspective of how a man can love his bride through her brokenness. You will take away some practical ways to change your bride's heart, and in so doing, change your marriage. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27, Paul says, I discipline my body and make it my slave. You know, we often forget, guys, that God has called us to steward the bodies he gave us so that we'll be ready, healthy, and spiritually dangerous to fight the good fight, whether it's working at your job, serving your God, protecting your bride, or being a great dad to your kids. That's why we're so excited to partner with Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. Mountain Tough Fitness Lab is run by Christian men who are passionate about training you to be your best version and to stay dangerous and ready for God. Join me on my journey by going to mountaintough.com and getting your free 6-week trial when you type in the code ARENA30. You won't be disappointed. Stay dangerous. Hey guys, I'm excited to bring my guest on today, Heidi St. Now guys, as you know, we mostly have men on this podcast, but man, we've got a power hitter at the plate today. She is going to rock your world, and I think she's going to help you to love your wife better than you've ever loved your wife. I'm super excited about this. She lives in Vancouver, Washington, just up the road from me, with her husband of 34 years, Jay. So Heidi's the author of 9 books, including Becoming MomStrong, How to Fight with All That's in You for Your Family and Your Faith. Its corresponding book, Becoming MomStrong Bible Study, and her latest, MomStrong 365, a 1-year devotional to encourage and empower everyday moms. Her podcast, listen to this, guys, Off the Bench with Heidi St. Gosh, that sounds a lot like a women's version of Men in the Arena. Has been downloaded 20 million, that's an M, million times. Heidi's been married to her college sweetheart, Jay, since 1989. The St. Johns live up the road from us just outside of Vancouver, Washington, where they run their nonprofit Firmly Planted Family and the Homeschool Resource Center. They have 7 children and 4 grandchildren. It's my pleasure to bring Heidi St. on today. Heidi, it's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. Let's go.
Yeah, I almost said it's good to have you on the show, man, because I always have dudes on. So if I call you a guy or man, just realize that I recognize your femaleness on the show.
Well, I mean, no one knows what a woman is anymore, well, so it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. So hey, tell us about your organization, what you do. Let's start there.
Yeah, so Jay and I have been running a nonprofit organization now for coming up on 30 years. It's called Firmly Planted Family, and our primary focus really for a long time was getting homeschool cooperatives in churches. So we planted over 100 of them in churches around the country. We are both Multnomah people. My husband graduated from Multnomah School of the Bible a long time ago, and we went directly into ministry. He was a pastor for 20 some odd years. Before that, he had a band appropriately called St. John. So they traveled all over the place. My husband is a very gifted guitarist. He was the lead guitar. In fact, they used to open for Petra, did all kinds of fun things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in the early 90s. And then I published a book a long time ago, and that book, someone sent it to Dr. Dobson. Dr. Dobson gave me a call and said, hey, you're talking about marriage, and it sounds to me like your message needs to get out. And so he had me on his show. Wow. And that really exploded the platform that we now have. Lots of people follow me, obviously, online and on the podcast. And you and I were just talking about this before the show. I ran for Congress last year. So we're doing a lot of things, obviously homeschooled all of our children, and now our grandkids are being homeschooled. So, I'm a huge believer that Christians belong at the intersection of faith and culture. And so I talk a lot about that. And right now we are running the nation's largest homeschool resource center just up the road from you in Vancouver, Washington. We currently have about 700 students here. And the Homeschool Resource Center open 5 days a week. We've got roughly 200 classes here. Wow. So we're trying to remove any obstacle that parents might feel toward homeschooling their kids. We want them to know you can do this. You can homeschool your kids, and we're here to help you. And so, so we've been doing ministry and doing life together, working side by side now for a long time. It's exciting.
Well, it's really interesting, Heidi. My view of homeschooling has really changed over the last 35 years. So I was a public school kid. My dad was a public high school teacher. So I got into ministry, got saved. I was from a non-Christian family, got saved, got into ministry like instantly. And I was like, man, these homeschool kids, and this is like 1990. They're weird, they're awkward, they're kind of arrogant. And I just was like, not a fan, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And then around 96, 95, 96, 97, these homeschool kids started getting involved in co-ops. And I thought, well, okay, this is the blending of two perfect worlds. So you've got, and then a lot of these the homeschool kids were getting involved in sports and athletic activities at the public school, so they had access to everything. And I'm at a point in my life now, listening to some of this, what I call intersectionality, garbage being strategically taught in the public schools, and I've swung to where I'm more a proponent for homeschool than I've ever had. I ever have been. I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan because we don't have to sit idly by and allow our children to be polluted and have their faith systematically and strategically deconstructed by the public schools. Even though I've taught or coached in public schools and my dad taught there, I'm just really disappointed in that. And our public school teachers that are Christians are in the belly of the beast, and I'm like in their corner.
It's the front line.
I'm in the corner all the way, but they've got a battle. But all that to say, that's not what we're here for today. But I'm just saying, I really love what you're doing. I've seen a difference in my ministry watching what you guys have done with your homeschooling and with the co-ops. I think it's been a game changer. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I mean, we're not obviously here to talk about homeschooling today, but I will tell you that what you said is exactly right. The public school is the front line of the culture, the hostile takeover of our nation, honestly, in so many ways. And we're not focused on reading, writing, and arithmetic in the schools anymore because Satan understands, and we need to understand also that education is not neutral. And what the school system has done now for many, many years is it's equipping parents to outsource the parenting of their children, and the attack on marriage and family has never been more intense than it is right now. Dr. Dobson actually said to me, nearly 17 years ago now, he said, man, Heidi, if you and Jay get the opportunity, minister to families. Families are going to be what's under attack. I mean, that guy was ahead of his time. Still is. He's an incredible human being, but he was right. And we're seeing this now in the culture, largely through the public school system, which separates children from their parents and makes parents look to be the dummy. So, I can't help you with that, little Johnny, let the professionals do it. Well, it's third grade math, figure it out, right? It's not that hard. But I think we're so used to outsourcing everything. We outsource our kids to the youth pastor for their spiritual formation. We outsource them to the schools for their academic formation. And I think that if we began to bring those things back in home and a husband and wife work together, we see transformation at the family level, starting with the marriage. And so that's what we focus on here at Firmly Planted Family. We focus on the marriage first. In fact, we're bringing Phil Gunger here in February to do Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage.
Gunger.
We do all kinds of cool stuff.
Whoa,
yes, dude.
Okay.
Oh, you need to come out.
He's
gonna be awesome.
He's the son of, I can't remember his name.
Mark
Gunger. Yeah. Okay. Wait.
Yep.
Who's the dad? Mark, right? And Phil
Mark
took over.
Gunger. Yep. And really, Phil is doing the very, very similar ministry. So he'll be coming here for Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. And in fact, on January 6th, I'm speaking with my friend Ken Ham at Word of Grace Church in Battleground. And we're going to be talking about how do we raise kids to face the secular giants. And we're going to be spending, a couple of hours just equipping parents. And honestly, you guys, it starts at home. It starts at the marriage. The adversary knows if he can take out your marriage, he's got a clean shot at your kids. We've got to get back to focusing on what's really important.
Well, and one of the things, you use the phrase outsource. One of the things that we tell men is that males defer, men don't defer. So we don't defer. So if you are, what I tell men many, many times, and I'll say it again, if you're a husband, if you're a dad and you've got public school kids, your teachers should in some way fear you. They should fear that if they say one thing that goes contrary to Scripture, that you're going to be in their office and in their ear. And I think when teachers realize that, it'll change things. I think that men can be a game changer, even in the public school, but they are in the belly of the beast and they are on the front lines. And you cannot sit idly back as your kid goes to public school. You have to be more fully engaged you ever have been in your life. So, but that's a whole nother deal and a whole nother story. So MomStrong, tell us about MomStrong.
Yeah, so I had an idea for a book. I guess it's been about 8 or 9 years ago now, in 2016, that published in 2017, that really chronicled my story of coming out of a broken family. So my parents, I grew up in an abusive home. My dad came from, he was raised by an alcoholic father. And though my dad wasn't an alcoholic, he was a very angry person. I think struggled his whole life to really feel loved, never really was loved by his own dad. And he brought what little tools he had into his marriage with my mom. And my dad was an angry, very abusive human being. And by the time I was 18 years old, my parents had separated. When I was 19 and I got married, my parents divorced that year. And I was diagnosed shortly after that, right around 20 years old or 21, with a pretty severe anxiety disorder. Because when you're, beaten half to death for most of your life, it actually hardwires your brain. So my brain was sort of hardwired for trauma. I was anxious all the time, and I didn't have issues with it until Jay and I got married. And I moved out of this, really stressful environment into a very peaceful environment. It's like I didn't know what to do with myself. I was in fight or flight mode all the time. And I was terrified to be a mother when Jay and I found out we were expecting our first baby. I was 21 years old, and I'll never forget those childbirth classes, the ones where they lie to you and they tell you if you breathe a certain way, it won't hurt. That's the class, right?
Hold on.
Yeah, that's right.
I was in those classes, although I didn't give birth.
Everything's better now.
Yeah. My wife was just screaming at the nurse. But my wife did it 2 times without any drugs. So she's gnarly.
Telling you,
she's gnarly.
I'm telling you, I did it once without drugs accidentally, and I never made the same mistake twice. But I felt like I could not be a mother. And I remember, this woman who's teaching these classes the very last day, and I'm looking down at this just ginormous belly, and I started crying because I thought, I've never seen this done right. Right. My father was abusive and angry my whole life. And I thought, I'm going to be an abusive, angry mother because it's the only thing I've ever known. And even though, I did a lot of things, my husband went to a public school and I went to a private school, and I threw myself into that private school. I mean, I did everything I could never to be home. So I ended up being, the captain of the cheerleading squad. And then I was the homecoming queen, and everybody saw this sort of what looked to be a very put together person on the outside, but on the inside, I was insecure. I was terrified that I was going to screw my kids up the way I felt like my dad had screwed me up. And Nola just said, you don't know who you are. God wants to make you new, and he's going to do it through the process of raising this little girl. And that's the story of becoming MomStrong. It takes this broken, when Jay married me, I was about as broken as a 19-year-old girl could be. And through the mercy and grace of God and the loving leadership of the incredible man that I married, God has given Heidi St, a woman who could not keep houseplants alive and did not know how to be a mother, 7 children. And it's really a story of how to fight with everything that's in you for your family and your faith, and to recognize that where you came from doesn't determine where God wants to take you. And so that has been the story of my life. It's really a story of just, and not obviously not done everything perfectly. And we can, spend a whole lot of time talking about that, but just how God brought me from this place of brokenness to say, hey, I'm going to make you new, and I'm going to make you into the image of my son through the process of being a mother and being a wife, and what that looks like when you yield yourself to what God says actually works in his word. And so that's a large part of it. And it's been hopefully an encouragement, I think, that hit the bestseller list at Tyndale last year. So it's in the hands of, in the hands of lots and lots of women now who I think come from a similar background. There's so much brokenness in our culture now, and men brokenness in marriages and brokenness in homes and families. I came from that place. I understand it. I recognize it when I see it. And my message is that God wants to heal your marriage. He wants to make you into that man or that woman that you feel like you can never be. And it comes from the power of the Holy Spirit, and just releasing the thing that you thought was going to be your future to say, okay, Lord, I can't do it. You get to show me now. I've tried it my way, it doesn't work. And so that is the series Becoming MomStrong, which the book I just released is the 7th book in that series. So it's been very well received, and it's exciting for me to be able to write it.
Okay, I just had a revelation. I think my wife has a quote from you in my bathroom.
Uh-oh.
Did you ever do an IF conference?
No, I've never done them, but I know the conference.
Did you ever say something like this? Go where you're called, stay where you're put, and grow where you're planted. Something like that?
No, that wasn't me, but I know who that was. It was probably Jenny Allen.
Okay, that's who it was. Okay.
I think I've heard the quote. And actually that's correct. That's the right way. That's the right way to look at things. And I think we look at everything through a lens of brokenness in the culture. And unless and until we learn to adjust that lens, we will never see things differently. And for me, it was a complete reframing. I can remember Jay looking at me when we got into like one of our very first arguments and just being like, whoa, how do you tame that dragon? Because I was so used to fighting for my own survival that I just like, fighting is life. That's just what we do. And I'm a fiery girl, right? And so God didn't take that fiery out of me. He's refining it. And I love that because being walking with the Lord doesn't mean we turn into patsies. It doesn't mean that we suddenly it's the meek and quiet spirit. It's the I hear this a lot to women about leadership in the home with their husbands. God doesn't want to remove the fire from you. He wants to use the fire. And so I've just been it's a tremendous story, my husband and myself, of just yielding to the Lord. And that man's had his hands full being married to me for 34 years. I'll tell you what.
I can relate because I'm pretty sure I married you as well in 1992. Well, this is one of the problems that men have is that a weak woman will ruin a man. I'm completely opposed to weak women. We do not want weak women. Weak women aren't found in the Bible. Proverbs 31, that woman is an entrepreneur. She's not weak. She's not passive. We want strong women. Strong women make strong men. Strong men make stronger women. The problem with our culture is we've got weak men and weak women growing up together and marrying and producing weakness. And so this is a problem. Yep. So God wants to take your fire that's just kind of a conflagration all over the mountain. He wants to turn it into a laser focus. And so you said, so I want to go, there's a lot here going on. I appreciate when you talk about abuse. I've got a couple buzzwords that bother me, and abuse is one of them. It sounds like you were actually, I think people throw the word around abuse, but when your dad is kicking you and beating you, that's it. So I want to be careful.
I mean, broken bones. The police were at my house when I was 17 years old. My dad was arrested and my family was moved to a safe house.
Oh no, I was gathering that from your story. Yeah. I just want to make sure that
I'm with you because for the same reason, I don't like it either. It's just like, my husband's not nice to me, or we fight every Thursday over dinner. He's abusive. No, shut up. Like, you don't know abuse.
It's insulting. It's insulting, right? It's insulting.
I just feel like we just live in such a weak-minded culture where everything's offending us, mm-hmm. and we want to be labeled like we just love the victim role in this. And I'm nobody's victim, by the way.
No, I understand.
Now, I'm nobody's victim. I want to be a victor. I want to be victorious. And I love my dad. Like, I think my dad's gone home to be with the Lord. And I've written about this too. He died a couple of years ago. We never found the healing in our relationship that I wanted. And in fact, I was I was speaking for Pastor Rob McCoy a couple of years ago, the weekend actually that my dad died. And I remember just because Rob looked at me, I was surprised that it hurt me the way that it did, because I think daughters in particular always are longing for and so desperately need the affection of their dads. They need to know that when, dads, when you look at your little girl, she needs to know that you see a princess, that you see a beautiful girl who is worthy of love and who God has great things for. And I never saw that. I never got that from my dad, and I had wanted it my whole life. And I'm speaking, for a pretty amazing audience in Los Angeles the night that my dad died. And in fact, I was going back and forth to the green room, just trying to get updates and talking to my sisters. And the next morning I got the call that he had passed away. And Rob looked at me and he could see that I really just kind of in a fog, moved my way through the Los Angeles airport trying to get home. And Rob said to me, he said, your dad never knew what a treasure he had, but he knows now. He knows now. And I think I needed to hear that. And so I don't hold any animosity towards my dad. I really do believe he did the best he could with the tools he had. I would like to see a generation of dads really strive to find the tools that they need so that there are less daughters and less sons going into adulthood the way that I did. But even so, God is the healer. And that's the message.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you say there. And then I also appreciated a word that you threw in. You said reframing. And I think there's a reframing that has to happen. And I often tell people, in fact, I had my wife on my podcast and I apologized her publicly because I framed her poorly when we raised our 3 sons. And so I had to go through a process of reframing her. She had to go through a process of reframing herself. And we both, 5 years ago, I think was when I discovered, you know what? I'm a broken guy and my wife is a broken gal. And it's my job to find healing and freedom in my brokenness, but it's also my job as her husband to help love her through her brokenness and help her to find freedom. But the first thing I have to do there is I have to identify her brokenness. So I've thought a lot about this. So when you bring that up, I really do appreciate that. So when you think about your own brokenness, Heidi, we got our audiences, we got women listening, but we're focusing on men. So how can a man who is also broken, how can he begin to identify the brokenness in his wife? Like I've got a list of things that I use to identify the brokenness in my wife, but what are some things for you? Like what would you tell these men? Hey guys, look for these things. These things will help you and give you a clue as to what her brokenness is.
I feel like very much for the 36 years that Jay and I have known each other, that we have endeavored, and he has especially been endeavored to be a student of me. So he has studied me. So, and it's not that we've done it perfectly. And in fact, I think more often than not, we learn from our mistakes. Like, well, that didn't work.
Yep.
Tried that. Well, that didn't work. Check that one off your list. But one of the things that Jay has done consistently is he has looked for strengths in me, and then he's given me opportunities to use those strengths. So rather than focus on the weakness, he has focused on the strength. So the things that he sees that are good. For example, a lot of people ask me, because I speak for a living, I'm gone, sometimes in the summertime for sure, 3 weekends out of every month, I'm gone at different places.
Wow.
The reason that I'm doing that is because Jay saw a gift in me long time ago when somebody asked me to pinch hit and fill in for another speaker. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. No, I'm not good at that. And I've never done that. I won't try it. And Jay was in the audience. Well, the Lord just spoke through me. It was totally the Holy Spirit. But when it was over, Jay said to me, I did not know you could do that. That's amazing. You should do that again. And I was like, really? I mean, I think what men need to understand is your wife she is a reflection of the things that you pour into her. Women were born responders. We are born to respond. So we respond to the leadership of our men. So I reflect and it was actually Jay who showed me this. He was just like, I believe that my role is the sort of CEO of our family, right? The spiritual leader in our home is to be the personal development director for every person that's under my care. And so Absolutely. He has done that. So he has been like the personal development director of Heidi St. John. So if there's anything that Heidi St. John is doing, it has really come from this incredible man who has loved me so well. And it was Jay who said, no, that's not who you are. This is who you are. See, I saw myself through the lens of my dad, but Jay saw me through the lens of the one who made me. And I think, because he could have absolutely pushed me into a victim corner.
Totally.
Right. But he didn't want me there.
Because he doesn't want to be married to that.
He doesn't.
And men want strength.
Yeah. And I credit Jay for it takes a strong man, as you said, to be married to a strong woman. And he has loved me very well that way. But I loved that Jay recognized so many years ago that I would be a reflection of how well he loved me. And I wasn't, when I was growing up, my mom was a reflection of how my dad loved her.
Absolutely.
And I was a reflection of how my dad loved me. Women are born responders, right?
Oh,
you give a
absolutely.
woman something and she's going to multiply it.
Mm-hmm.
You give her a seed, she's going to give you a baby.
Mm-hmm.
You give her a house, she's going to give you a home,
Yes.
right? You give her ingredients for a meal, she's going to give you a meal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women are born to multiply. They are born to replicate. They are born to respond. They are born to reflect. And when you've got a husband who really understands that, bam, you got a marriage on fire.
That's so cool. I've just finished a book called Dialed In, and it's 20 qualifications of a man. And one of those is the leader. And in 1 Timothy, Paul says that the leader manages his household well. Well, that Greek word is prostomai, and it literally means it's basically, I have a wall analogy, to preside over, to protect around, and then within the house, the rooms represent this provision. And it's not physical provision. That's part of it. We live in a day and age where both couples work. It's actually emotional, spiritual. It's loving each person within your home the way that they need, according to how God made them and the brokenness they bring. And so what your husband did is he said, yeah, I am the CEO of this household, and everybody, my 7 children, now my 4 grandchildren, my bride, they all need to be loved by me according to how God made them. So that's a beautiful thing. So you said, and I love this, I always tell people I have a PhD in Shanaology, which is my wife. So study her is critical. And then you also said that you spoke and you were really insecure about that. And your husband kind of called out the gift in you. And so one of my things, and tell me about this, one of the ways that I love Shanna through her brokenness is I've identified areas where she's insecure and spoke a truth where that lie exists. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think Jay's done such a good job. There was, I love to tell, because we homeschooled 7 children. It's no joke, right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
And I can remember one time in particular, Jay came home from work and he was gone a lot, during the day because he worked as a pastor. And he came home one night and I'm a mess. Like I'm on the couch, I'm crying, dinner's, I don't know, I burned dinner. Or I forgot to plug the crock pot in or something. And the kids have lost their math books and there's 6 kids running all over our house. And I mean, I am exhausted. And he came home and he sees me on the couch and he's like, what, Heidi, what the heck, what's going on? I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm terrible at this. I actually want to do what you're doing. So you get to go away from our home all day long and talk to adults. I've got kids talking to me and, and pushing every single button that I have. And I'm just exhausted. Nothing's working. He goes, I want you to look at me. He got right down. I could cry thinking about it. Cause I mean, I looked a mess, right? He gets right down. He sits on the floor, on the floor in front of the couch. And so I set up a little bit and he gets really close to me. He goes, look at my eyes. Look at me. So I look at him. He goes, Heidi St. John, ordinary women would be dead by now. He goes, there's nothing ordinary about you. Look at you, girl. He goes, I love that messy thing you're doing with your hair. I'm like, really? He goes, oh yeah, I love it. I love those yoga pants. You can wear them for 4 more days in a row. That stained t-shirt that smells like spit up. I love it. You can sleep in it tonight. I think that's the sexiest thing you're going to wear all week. And I was like, really? Well, by this point, we both know he's lying.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
But you know what he did in that moment? Rather than go, why is the dinner not done? Why are there toys strewn all over the kitchen floor? Why is the house a mess? He made me want to be a better mom. He called out the good in me instead of seeing everything that had gone wrong that day. And it made such an impression on me. And we always had this, I love being a homemaker. I mean, a lot of people see me and think, oh, the author, the writer, the speaker, the podcast, or whatever. If I could be anywhere, Jim, I would be home. I love being home. In fact, I was up early this morning making sourdough bread and putting chicken soup in the crock pot so that when we get home tonight from work, Jay and I will have a meal. That's my heart. But it was my husband who nurtured those things in me by noticing on the bad days that I just needed to be told, hey, a bad day doesn't make a bad mom. You're an amazing wife. And Jay has done an incredible job of noticing things that are good and calling those things out. And I think when you do that, when a husband does that in the life of his wife, his children notice it right away, and his sons are learning how to treat their wife someday. But B, he is really helping her be the wife that he wants her to be, right? Because in that moment, I wanted to be a better wife for Jay St. John. I want that man, I take care of myself largely for him. I want him to come home from work and go, hey, I am happy to be home, right? Because I know that it's going to be received and he's going to appreciate it, right? And so, uh, I think Jay's gift in my life was largely appreciating. He sees something in me and he would appreciate it. And that made me want to grow it even more. So, to me, the miracle of my life in many ways is God bringing Jay St. John into my life and picking up this broken 19-year-old girl and helping me become the woman that God saw the moment I was conceived. I didn't see that woman. Jay saw her before I saw her.
So that's another thing I wrote down here. So not only should a man study his bride, but he needs to notice her.
Yeah.
And those in some ways are different. You need to notice things. What I have discovered about my wife is I tell her I love her every day, pretty much every day. And pretty much every day I somehow make some comment about her beauty.
Yes.
Because maybe this is a woman thing or this is a brokenness thing, because it seems like she just forgets. Yeah. And so I'm like,
it's hard. It's hard to be a woman. I mean, honestly, the standards for women are ridiculously high. They're ridiculous. I've often said to Jay, because, I speak for a living, when I ran for Congress, if the guy showed up and he looked a little bit ruffled, whatever, his jacket's a mess, no one's going to say anything. If I show up and my eyeliner's not quite right, or I look like I'm too tired, that's what they're going to write in the paper. It is very interesting. And that's a cultural thing, right? I mean, the culture is very hard on women with regard to beauty. But if you look at social media, what are the women trying to get? The likes on Instagram, right? It's so much. And if a dad pours into his daughter that way, or a husband pours into his wife that way, she's not going to go looking for that acceptance or those likes on Instagram. She's going to look for them in her own home, right? She's going to look for them. She's going to look for them there. And I watch, Jay and I have 5 daughters, right? Our oldest 2 are in their 30s now, and our youngest is 13. So we've got this like wide age range in our home. But there have been many times that the kids have come down the stairs, the girls in particular. The girls will come down the stairs in the morning, and my husband will stop what he's doing and go, "Oh my word, that vision of loveliness. What is even happening? You are so beautiful." And you can see those girls. I mean, they shine like the top of the Chrysler building when their daddy says, "You're beautiful." And the same thing's true. Women are born responders. And and I think this is so largely why, you and I talked about this briefly, this ridiculous push to feminize our men, this ridiculous, toxic masculinity. No. Women need that masculinity. We were born to respond to it. We are desperate to see a strong masculine man who knows how to love his woman and knows how to love his children. And boy, the culture is doing the very best it can to tear those things down. So I've been shouting from the rooftops here at my podcast now for a long time. Men, don't listen to the lie. I love me some manly man. Heidi St. John gonna love her some Jay St. John, because that man knows how to love his woman. And it's it's a skill that doesn't get appreciated in the culture right now. And then you see all these women on OnlyFans, and you see all these girls trying to get all these likes on Instagram and TikTok and everything else. When if they would have received it at home, I think you'd see a whole lot less of it.
Oh, you would. So he noticed you, he studied you. If I were talking to Jay, at what point did he realize I married a beautiful woman who's broken, and I'm going to give my whole life to making that mosaic a beautiful picture? Like, at what point did he notice that in you? Not what you could be, but the broken part.
He noticed it before we were married. So when he actually, the day that he asked my dad if he could this is how screwed up my life was. He came over and he asked my dad, and I was right there. I mean, I was in the kitchen. He said, "Can I want to marry your daughter." And my dad looked right at hhim and said, "Why would you want to marry her? She's a terrible cook. If you'll just wait for 4 years, her sister Heather will be, Heather's going to be
he literally said that?
Right in front of me. I mean, oh yeah. No, he tore me down. And by the time Jay left our house that night, he was in tears, and he looked at me. I'll never forget it, as long as on the front porch of our home. And he said, "I'm going to get you away from that man." And so he knew before and in fact, the summer that we got married was the summer that our family was moved to a safe house. It was Jay that changed the locks on our house. It was my husband and actually all my little sisters, and there were 6 girls in my family, and I was the oldest, right? So Jay has been, he's been loving on those little sisters of mine also, but he absolutely knew. I don't think he knew the depth or how broken because I didn't even know, like until I actually got away and we were married and we were trying to start our own life. I don't think he realized the ramifications and how that would play out, because I don't know that there's any way to do that, but he absolutely knew. Boy, I'm coming into it. And he came from a great house, really happy family, wonderful parents, an idyllic life on Big Lake, Washington, And so to come into my brokenness was a real paradigm shift for him. And he's loved me well. But yeah, that was the summer before we got married. He just said, "I'm going to get you away from that man." But that was the "can I marry your daughter" story, Wow. So he knew going into it.
So you've been married, you've been together 36 years. You've been married
34. We were married for 34 years this past September. So we got married in 89.
Congratulations. So
thank you.
Here's my question. So if I have a problem with Christianity, one of them is we think that God can fix it. God can fix anything.
Yeah.
The reality is things come into this world broken, and it seems like we battle brokenness all our lives.
Yes.
Paul battled brokenness in Romans chapter 7. So at what point in your personal journey would you say you can turn to your husband and go, "Hey, I'm good to go. You don't have to love me through my brokenness anymore"? At what point does that ever actually happen?
Never.
Okay, no. Thank you. You. I agree 100%.
It will never happen, because honestly, I mean, it's like the Apostle Paul, gird up your mind, right? Mm-hmm. You let your guard down, or you stop tending the garden and the weeds. We live in a broken world. Mm-hmm. You stop tending the garden, the weeds grow right back, right? And I think that's true in every relationship. It's certainly true. It's been true in my marriage, and it's the same with Jay. Right. So I'm looking for always, hopefully not always doing it well, because we're just people, and every once in a while we have a bad night or we grump at each other or whatever it is. But I think ultimately, until the Lord takes us home, we're constantly tending that garden, constantly looking for ways to improve, constantly saying, I think it was Ruth Bell Graham who said that a good marriage is the union of 2 forgivers, right? People can say, "Hey, you know what? Wow, look at me. I behaved really badly last night. I'm sorry about that." And it's keeping those short accounts. I think we often don't realize the value of asking for forgiveness. Now, I'm not talking about the person who's like, "Oh, hey man, I'm sorry about that," and you just say "I'm sorry" over and over again until the sorry doesn't mean anything.
Sorry doesn't mean much anyway.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. No, it's the action that follows the apology that shows whether or not you actually meant that apology. But I don't think you ever stop. I mean, I feel like until the Lord takes us home, one of us home, we're constantly going to be working to improve hopefully, working to improve our marriage. And I hope my kids are watching. I think they are.
It's interesting, because there's a brokenness we bring from our individual stories, and then there's a general brokenness that we all bring. And let me explain. Yep. Like for a man, here's a masculine brokenness. Really, ready? The man asks this question every day of his life: do I have what it takes? So my wife just needs to tell me I'm awesome. Mm-hmm. You're the strongest. Bald is better than anything else on this planet. She just needs to tell me how awesome I am. But she has a shirt that she wears one of our favorite shirts for her is "Tell me I'm pretty and give me tacos." And so a woman, the question that she asks is, am I good? Am I enough? And so all of my life, I will be speaking to the general brokenness of my wife, my daughters-in-law, and my granddaughter, and tell them, "You're a beautiful princess. You're beautiful. All my life I will do that, because that is a general brokenness. But there's also this specific brokenness and my wife, we've talked about her brokenness, and I don't want to speak about it publicly, but she's got a brokenness that she brought in specifically to her brokenness. And so being her husband, it's my job, just as your husband, it is his job to speak constantly to that brokenness. What do you think about this phrase? Speak to your wife's brokenness until it becomes boring.
Ooh, wow. Or maybe until it becomes until it becomes rote. I
Rote
don't
is
know
the rote.
that.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the act of loving that person that God gave you, the moment it becomes boring, and it almost makes me think like, if it's boring, you maybe don't notice that you're doing it. So maybe it's just so ingrained in you that you just that you boy, I would never want to use the word boring in my marriage in any way, but I do think what I hear you saying is, speak to her until it becomes so natural that it's just something that just flows out of you, right? Or that, you're addressing that brokenness. In fact, what you're saying to me, I wrote it down, do I have what it takes? I just wrote that down, that you said that, because I want to remember in my head, I'm always a student of Jay, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, I see that in him. I see him constantly asking that question. Do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes? And so a woman who loves her man is going to be like, oh, I should notice that. Right.
And
oh,
let me tell you a story. He's 56, so now he's saying it in all caps. I'm just telling you, it's happening. So just know that.
Yeah.
So you've
Okay.
got
So I love that. This is encouraging
and so
for me. I love that.
Well, when I talk about until it's boring, what I'm saying is this: my wife should never be. No, let me rephrase. Guys, your wife should never be surprised by you telling her she's beautiful. Your wife should never be surprised when you tell her you love her. Your wife should never be surprised when you pat her on the behind and say, man, I love that. I'm just saying things that are realistic things here. And so this is I think
it's true though.
But isn't Jay's over there going, I can't wait till this podcast is over. So isn't it, but isn't it true though that, I read a book years ago, and it's not a Christian book, but it's really, the title interested me. It was called Things Fall Apart. And even things that were broken, that once were broken, that God has put together, isn't the propensity of our lives to fall apart if we don't have people constantly maintaining the garden?
100%. Yeah. 100%. And that we even would ever believe that we could just arrive and be completely healed. We're never going to be totally whole until we're in heaven, until we're with the one who made us. We're never going to be totally whole. But I think we're always moving in that direction. Like, how can to me, the question has always got to be, how can I do better? I can always do better. Right. I mean, Jay and we've had a rough week for a lot of different, we just got this building with, I think there are 37 staffers here, full time. We've got a lot going on. I'm traveling this weekend. It's been kind of a crazy weekend. And we had a run in the other night. I mean, which we don't normally do, but boy, I'll tell you what, I was like, oh yeah, you want to go? Let's talk about that. Right. Well, the very next morning, we're sitting down for coffee. Like, one of the things I love about Jay is he brings me coffee in the morning, and I don't even really love coffee, but I love him bringing me coffee. So just the fact that he's like, hey, I brought you, this is your favorite mug, or the one he brings me that says Mrs. on it. I love that, and we sat down and talked about what happened, and the first thing he said was, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Right. And isn't that the truth? I feel like everything is harder than we think it's going to be, right? Marriage is harder than we think it's going to be. Parenting is harder than we think it's going to be. That really beautiful gift that we just got of a $16 million building is harder than we thought it was going to be. And it doesn't negate the blessing. And so it's okay to say, this is really hard. I apologize. Wow, I didn't handle that very good.
I've been processing this, so I'm kind of going off script a little bit. I've been counseling a lot of Christian couples that are not in a Christian marriage. They're both Christians. They profess Christ, but their marriage is not Christian. And so I went back to Ephesians 5, chapter 22 to 33. And this might be a book idea. I'm just trying to figure out if it's actually true. And as I'm looking at scripture, I'm looking at what Paul is saying, and I'm realizing, really the foundation of a good marriage, is Christ, right? And he's also the target. But if you really read the scripture, the foundation of marriage is actually suffering and then sanctification. In other words, suffering is you have to realize that the sunset you're riding into is a freaking furnace, and marriage is hard. And the next level up is marriage is about sanctification. It's not about your happiness, it's about your holiness.
Right.
And so what happens is once we begin to build this relationship, then we get to experience the levels of sameness and of security and of satisfaction. But we've got to understand there's a foundation, and so, it's hard. You marry this, I married this beautiful woman, went on a honeymoon. It was horrible. Got home. And when we got home, realized she didn't know how to cook. I've been cooking for 30-something years. I love to cook. And I couldn't sleep on the pillows that were decorative and the duvet cover that was decorative. I didn't even know what a duvet was. Couldn't use the towels on the rack. And I'm realizing, what did I get myself into? But what I needed, because I thought her whole job was to make me happy. And she thought my whole job was to serve her. And see, it wasn't until we realized that we were two Christians, first generation Christians living a non-Christian marriage, and had to figure that out. So this stuff never goes away, right?
No, it never does. But I do think it gets easier.
Yes,
I think it gets easier, but the getting easier comes because you're laying down because it's easier to lay down your life. Once you start realizing, oh, hey, this is a lifetime thing, then it becomes easier to do that. And I will say, I mean, for all the years that Jay and I have been married, the hardest year of our marriage, most people hate when I say this, but the hardest year of our marriage was our 25th wedding anniversary.
So I'm seeing more divorces between 25 and 30. It's crazy.
Yep,
Explain why. Explain why.
I think for Jay and I, we were just in a different season of life. It's like we'd gotten used to. So Heidi's, I'm homeschooling the kids, and Jay was a pastor, so we're living on a shoestring, really. Because,
totally,
because of the ministry.
Understood.
And then we lost our house in the 2008, crash of the housing market and all that. And so we'd sort of survived that, but boy, it was rough. And then all of a sudden, I'm doing more speaking, and what Jay was doing, he's not doing anymore. And it was like we got into this, like Jay didn't like what he was doing. I didn't like what I was doing. I can remember just going, you know what, go back to pastoring, and I'll go back to being a homeschool mom, which is what I liked anyway. And you like what you were doing. This whole thing we're doing right now, it's just, we were so unhappy. And on the night of our 25th anniversary, our kids threw us a big old party. Like there's 100 people there, people from college. And Jay and I were just like, we were not, I mean, it was not cool. And we went away. Our kids sent us away to Bend for a couple of nights, and we worked it out. I mean, we had to hash that thing out. I mean, there was crying. There was realized that we'd gotten to a place where we had let things go. And now there was this shift in our marriage, right? And Jay felt like, what you're doing now, but I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. And we had to get to a point where we realized, okay, work has to be done. And because we love each other, we're going to do the work. We're going to do that hard work. And it is hard work, but I'll tell you, I mean, this, you guys have been married for a long time. When you do the hard work, the payoff is worth it. And we keep the payoff in front of us. But for some reason, I thought, boy, if you make it past whatever they call the 7-year itch, then you're fine. Then you make it to 15 years and you're fine. No, you're always working, dude.
Oh, and I'll tell you what, I've had two men.
You're hard.
Yes. I've had two men call me in marriages of over 3 decades. 2 Christian men call me. One was in Hawaii with his wife alone, whispering from a bedroom, telling me he was afraid of his wife because he hadn't been alone with her for 30 years because the family revolved around the children and not the marriage.
Oh, never do that.
And then I had another guy tell me his little timid wife, he was flat out afraid of her. And I'll tell you what, that manifests after 25 to 30 years. If you're not pouring into that marriage, what I tell guys is Jesus is the most important person in the universe, but your wife is the most important person on the planet. And your kids need to know, I've told my kids, if I'm going to take a bullet between you or them, you're going to be missed. I love you. It'll be hard, but your mom will live. She's more important than you to me. And until a guy can say that, especially second and third marriages.
Yep.
Now here's the other thing we're talking about, Heidi. If I'm trying to love you through your brokenness and I'm on my second marriage and I'm telling you, hey, my kids are more important than you.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
I've heard that. I've heard that from men.
Well, I've
Christian
heard it from
men.
Women too.
Yes.
I've had wives who would say to me, why are you focused on taking care of your husband? He's a grown man. He can take care of himself. I'm like, you're missing the point.
That's not Christian. That's not a Christian marriage.
No, it isn't. And they miss the point. I don't take care of my husband because he can't take care of himself. I'm folding the laundry and I'm doing the things that are, you consider sort of stereotypical gender roles or whatever. It's a way for me to show him that I love him. It's not because he can't do it for himself. It's a way for me to lay my life down. When I'm scrubbing a toilet and I feel like nobody notices, I have to remember I'm doing this as an act of love that someone may never see. Right. But it's a way for me to lay down my husband lays his life down for me in 100 different ways.
Yep. Yep.
And I think we miss that, right? In this culture of it's always me. And I think men need to understand it's the little things that add up to be the big things at the end of the day. It's like what you were saying. It's like Jay coming up in the kitchen. Like I got finished putting some bread out last night because our daughter had a birthday this weekend. So I'll be gone speaking to Los Angeles. I'm coming home hours early so we can celebrate the 13th birthday of our youngest daughter. And I was up, late last night cleaning the kitchen, and Jay came up to me probably 10:30 at night and smacked me on the butt and was just like, "What can I do? How can I help?" Dude, that to me was worth 100, dozen roses that you bring to my house. The fact that you saw that I was doing something, you came up in that little pat on my behind, said, "I think you're cute, and what can I do?"
That's degrading. You're objectifying your wives. No, you're not.
Dude, objectify her. That's what she loves.
She's the only one you have.
You married her. She's the one. She should be the object of your affections.
Thank you.
Objectify your wife.
Thank you.
She loves that. And any woman, especially a married woman, that would tell you otherwise needs professional help.
Yeah. Thank you. Gosh, this is so good. I am really appreciating this.
I want my husband to look at me and say, "You are the sexiest thing I have ever seen."
Every day of your life. Every day of your life.
He wants to buy me lingerie. I'm happy to wear it. I don't understand this push in the culture, to divorce these, what we would call stereotypical gender roles. God made those roles. I want to embrace them. Viva la difference, right? And so these were things that Jay and I have been, learning through the course of 36, years of being together, 34 years of marriage now, that we're learning, like, if I meet his needs, we're wired very differently. Men and women are just wired differently. And we're not here to, I used to, for some reason, for about 10 years, because I wrote a book on marriage. That's how I got on Dr. Dobson's show. And I had a whole section in there on sex and marriage and why I thought it was so important. And women are not seeing it the way they need to see it, right? Because a woman, in order to want to have sex with her husband, she needs to feel like has that emotional connection.
That she's enough. I want to
feel like you get me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know that you get me. You want your wife to meet you in bed, help her with the dishes. There's the thing, right?
You just quoted James Dobson. You just quoted Dobson.
Did I really?
Yeah. Dude, sex begins in the kitchen.
And it absolutely does.
Yeah.
But what I didn't want to realize was there are often times when, for whatever reason, whether it's work was busy that day or the kids or whatever, we can't make that emotional connection that I so desperately need, but he needs a physical connection, and he can't connect with me emotionally until I meet his needs physically. And at some point, one of you has to lay down your life and say, "Okay, I don't feel the emotional connection right now, but I'm going to love you in that way anyway." Right. And so we go to our little corners of marriage, right? And we don't budge. Well, you didn't get me. Well, you didn't help me with the dishes. Well, we haven't had sex for 3 days or whatever it is. And pretty soon you're so far off into your own little corner that the enemy is just like, "Yes, I have you right where I want you," because now the walls begin to go up. And you know what? Even in a good marriage, it doesn't take long for those walls to go up. And people need to realize that it's the constant coming back to, what do I want out of this marriage? What can I do? What is it that God is asking me to do? There's so many days, Jim, that I am asking the Lord, like, help me minister to my husband in a way that he feels loved, right? Because he has a love language and I have a love language. So what's the key, guys? Learn to speak in the language that your wife understands. If you love her only in your love language, she can't hear you because you're only speaking your language. So it's like we have to learn to speak that other person's language. And in my relationship with Jay, his love language is almost 100% physical. I have to learn to speak in that language. That's not the language that I speak in by myself. I have to learn it. And when he began to learn to speak in a language that I actually understood, now you're firing on all cylinders, right? Because now he's speaking to me in a way that I can actually understand and I can receive it. But man, it takes intentionality, right? You got to want to do that. You got to want to learn that language that maybe doesn't come naturally to you.
That is so good. You said something a while back and I camped on a little bit in my brain. You said loving them in the little things, like love them in the little things, men. In other words, those little things compound over time.
Absolutely.
A 30-year marriage, like we've got a phenomenal marriage that sucked at year 1 through 5.
Yeah,
it really did. But once I realized, God put on my heart to outlove and outserve my wife. So I started making her coffee every day. But what I
see,
didn't
the little
realize,
things.
but what I didn't realize, Heidi, was that my wife's love language was acts of service. And that coffee thing changed our marriage. Huh?
I think it's every woman.
Yeah, maybe.
It's
I
think so.
And
It's
here's
acts of service.
And so I would say, men, it's not physical touch just because you like sex. That's not what Gary Chapman meant. For me, it's words of affirmation. So it's really, so here's what I have 4 things that I thought. Tell me what you think about this. So I have 4 things that I try to do with my bride, and 4 things I think men should do to love their wives in their brokenness. So just tell me, and I think you've already hit on these. So I'm going to say the first one, you just said it, speak her language, talking about her love language. So you hit that one out of the park. And you also said the second one, which is, and here's how I phrase it, love her in spite of herself. In other words, choose to love her regardless of the ledger. Don't keep that, regardless of the love bank, love her anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. Right. And it's hard. It's almost impossible to know kind of what's happened in the heart of your wife in any given moment, but she will reflect you. And so if you walk into the house and you're catching some cold air off of her or whatever it is, boy, you can warm her up pretty quick, and I think it's so important. Yeah. So important. That's a good one.
Well, I mean, I really do believe that the wife is the glory of the man. Like if your wife looks ugly to you now, if your wife is frumpy and haggard and wore out and has tired eyes, that's on you, bro. I mean, you didn't marry that woman that way. She became that. There's a reason she became that. The other thing, you talked about this earlier, and I just want to highlight this, confronting the lies that you believe with truth. Like Jay did that really well. Yeah. You can speak in public. You are beautiful. You are more than this. You are all these things. And he spoke that into you. You clearly have a countenance of a woman who is loved well. So, whenever I see a woman who is loved well, I want to high five their husband. Hey, good job, bro. Give him a little good game pat on the back of his behind there. It's not abuse, buddy. It's just good game. Just good game. Jay and I can give a little pat to each other, That's
right.
And then the other thing I had here, and you said this also, all these things we've covered, is that it's so important that we pursue our wives daily. Can you just talk to the guys about this? Why is this so important to not do the monthly date or to pursue her daily?
I hate that. Here's our monthly date. Oh, really? Because you just lost 28 days. 28 days when you could have been doing a little thing, those little things. It's like what you said. It's bringing her a cup of coffee. It's saying, you know what? Wow. Instead, when you come home from work, and especially when you've got little ones at home, this is pro tip. You come home from work, don't notice the mess. Notice your wife, and then she won't be a mess. Right.
Oh, say that again. Say that again.
When you come home from work and you got little kids running around and the first thing you see is a mess, don't notice the mess. Notice your wife.
Okay.
If you'll notice your wife, she won't be a mess.
I got a question for you. So one of the things that I tell guys over and over and over and over again is that it doesn't matter. Everybody's all about how you start your day, all the podcasts. How do you start your day? How do you start your day? And I'm like, that's great. But my question is, how do you finish your day?
Right. And so anybody can start strong. It's hard to finish
I don't care
strong.
If you read your Bible, run 5 miles and take a cold plunge. What I care about is, are you loving are you picking your kids up? Are you loving your bride? So I'm getting a lot of pushback. A lot of my blue collar guys are going, bro, I work a full-time job. This is garbage. You're a pencil pusher. And so I get a lot of these blue collar guys, and you have them where you're at, that are pushing back saying, I don't have time to spend a meal a day with my family. I don't have time to love my kids after I get off work. I'm honestly, Heidi, I'm calling BS on these guys.
Yeah. Well, it is BS.
But we'll talk to me about these guys that say, I don't have time for that. I work a full-time blue collar job.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get out of relationships what you put into them, right? And so if you're working, and honestly, I will tell you that if your wife is home with children all day long, that's about as physical a job as you are ever going to get, especially if she's breastfeeding. I remember, dude, I have had 7 children, right? There were times Jay would come home from work, I'd be, do not touch me. Do not touch me. I have been tugged on, pulled on, cried on, snotted on all day long. Like, don't touch me. I just need, oh my gosh. Like 10 minutes to myself. And actually Jay and I got to a point because he would come home from work, he'd be exhausted. Right. And he'd walk in the door and I'm like, yes, an adult. And I just, here's my day. Blah, blah, blah. And he wasn't ready. He needed and I had to go, okay, what do you need? He needed 15 minutes to just go and like change into a Superman outfit or whatever he had to do to get out of that frame of mind. But I'm telling you, man, it is worth it. If you can come home, maybe you need to stop off on the side of the road and just let your day wash off of you before you walk into the door. Because the most important thing that will ever happen to your life is not happening at work. It's happening at home. And it's not work. It's home.
And what will you be remembered for? You said it earlier in the podcast. These men will die one day.
Yeah.
And there will be people weeping at their funeral. And my question is, what will their tears represent? Tears of regret because they have unfinished business they never had with you, or tears of mourning because they just lost the greatest man they ever lived with?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. And I think, when you pour into the things that matter, we're all in a season. I was just talking about this on my show the other day. We're either in a season of reaping or we're in a season of sowing. And if you're a young man listening to this and your wife is young and you guys are in your 30s or even your 40s, for goodness sake, you're in a season of sowing. And one day that sowing will be over and you will be in a season of reaping. You'll spend the rest of your life reaping what you have been sowing. And if you sow wind, you will reap a storm. And if you want to live out the older years of your life in peace and joy and without regret, then you bust it in those years when you are sowing. And that may mean that you're up with your wife in the middle of the night with little babies and all the things. And it might mean, all of the things that you just feel like, I can't do this anymore. I'm telling you what, it will reap a dividend and it will yield the peace. The Bible calls it the peaceful fruit of righteousness, right? That's what the Bible refers to when the Bible's talking about that season of reaping. Jay and I are in a season of reaping now, right? With grandchildren, and most of our kids are grown. We still have the my little whippersnapper. I have one kid left at home of the 7, but we're largely in a season of reaping. And I always tell parents, especially husband and wife, pour into the things that are the most important so that when you look back, the one thing we don't want to do is look back over our life with regret. I wish I would have loved my wife better. I wished I would have told my children that I love them. I wished I would have worked on that little honey-do list. You guys, you think that it doesn't matter? That honey-do list is gold. That is pure gold. Everyone knows, all right, that marriage is a series of interactions, right? It's an exchange. You're either taking something or you're giving something, right? And so we want to keep those accounts really short. We pour into the things that matter. And if you can constantly keep in mind, okay, what is this going to look like? What do I want my marriage to look like 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now? I'm telling you what, if you keep your eye on the horizon and you realize, okay, I'm in a season of sowing right now, sow the thing that you want to reap in mind. And boy, I'll tell you, there's dividends. I was just with Rob. I was telling you, Rob McQuay was here speaking last week about politics and my run for Congress and all the things. And we had a whole bunch of people here to listen. And I said to him when he was leaving, I said, every time I see your wife, I think you have loved her well. She radiates joy. She's cheerful. You can tell he has provided for her. He has loved her. She is loved. And because she felt that love from him, she radiates that love to other people. When Michelle McCoy walks into a room, you're in a room with a joyful woman who knows what it is like to be loved. And that really, in large part, I think is credit to her husband, who is obviously loving her well. In fact, when he introduced her, he's like, this is my wife, Michelle. Everyone thinks she's my daughter. She's not. She's my wife. And you can just see she's just glowing now, right? Because they're our age. And you get into your 50s and your wife really needs to hear it. Girl, you look good. My husband said to me the other day, I was always hoping to be married to an older woman. You are blowing my mind today, right? That's it's the little things. It didn't cost him anything, but those are little deposits that he's putting into my heart, into my life. And boy, I'll tell you, the dividends they're going to come back big.
It's just really interesting. I've watched my wife age with her girlfriends from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And to watch her exceed them in beauty over the last 30 years, it's been really interesting to watch. You know what I mean? Because they were all on the same playing field, but I'm like, she exceeds them now. I'm like, what happened? How does that happen? How does one exceed in beauty over 30 years? You know what I mean? It's really interesting to me. Anyway, Heidi, there's so much. You are going to come back on my show again, and we're going to tackle some more of this stuff. This has been so fun for me, and I love bringing strong, powerful women on our show who love Jesus and understand biblical Christianity, because our guys need to hear from women like you about how they can love their brides better. And so thank you so much. How can our people get a hold of our creeping women who are on this podcast listening? How can our ladies, how can our people pick up your resources and get more plugged in to what you're doing?
Well, I'm lit up like a Christmas tree on the internet. So if you just Google Heidi St. John, you're going to find me. But you can go to HeidiSt.John.com. I'm over at Instagram, and I have the Off the Bench podcast, which is anywhere the podcasts are available. Like you just said, coming up on it's over 22 million downloads now. So it's growing, and that podcast airs 5 days a week. My books are available anywhere that books are sold. Also, I have an online Bible study community called Faith That Speaks. I like to ask women, if your faith found its voice, what would God have you say? If your faith found its feet, where would God take you? So every single month over the Faith That Speaks community, I release a brand new Bible study for the month of January. We're going to be studying Esther. And what would it look like? I mean, that woman was married to Xerxes, right? That was nobody you wanted to mess with. And yet God put her there, and he did an extraordinary thing through her obedience. So we're going to be studying sort of the epic nature of the book of Esther in January. And then every single month we release a new study, and then I teach it online. And so you can join that community at faiththatspeaks.com or MomStrong International. They both go to the same place. So we got a lot going on, and I hope people will check out Firmly Planted Family. That's the nonprofit organization, and the Firmly Planted Homeschool Resource Center, which is located right here in Vancouver. And
you raised 7 kids. That's impressive.
They're amazing.
And 4 grandchildren. So that's awesome. So
nobody I want to hang out with more. No offense. Nobody I want to hang out with more in the evening than our adult children, who will come over and, sit around the house. Good time. We love our family.
Well, what's interesting, Heidi, is that you talk about reaping and sowing, and it's really interesting. So my sons are 25, 27, and 29. I mean, they're my hunting partners.
Yes.
We just love, we love butchering game. We're just kind of a bunch of meat people over here.
Yeah. Me too, man.
So, I mean, but what
vegans, we don't get it.
What's it? What? I don't speak that language. Anyway, so when my son got married in August, and I told his wife, who actually worked for me as my executive assistant for several years, I said, if you are a vegetarian, you're not allowed in our family. Jokingly, but I'm not really joking. Anyway, but it's really interesting because we're able to reap this relationship. I've moved from this father role as my kids are in their mid and late 20s to a friend role.
Yes.
And see, I'm still their dad. But see, now it's weird because now I'm their advisor, I'm their coach, and in a lot of ways, they're coming alongside of me. We shot a buck in this hellhole this year, and my son Darby said, "Hey, Dad, roles have switched, man. Look who's carrying more meat now." And I love the fact that they're wanting to take care of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to be able to reap.
It's reaping.
It's reaping that. And so I would echo what you're saying, Heidi, that men, you want to reap the fruits of your labors. And even though you're in the stress bubble right now and you're exhausted and you're wiped out, you come home from work, just lay on your back and throw kids in the air. I used to do that for hours.
Do it. And your wife will think it is so hot.
I'm serious.
Really?
I'm serious.
You love on your kids, and your wife is looking at you going, that guy is hot. That's literally what it is.
I don't think she ever says that when you're on the couch with a beer and the remote control.
Nope.
Is that sexy? No.
Nope, not sexy.
Anyway,
we should do that. Go over you can do sexy, not sexy. Sexy, is it sexy? Is it not sexy?
Oh, hold on. I got to write that down. Hey, write that down, Daniel. Anyway, hey, Heidi. No, we love doing surveys with the guys. So sexy, not sexy. So anyway, hey, thanks so much for coming on. I had a blast.
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me. Let's do it again.
Okay. Hey guys, did you know that Men in the Arena is a crowd-funded, faith-based 501c3 that receives approximately 90% of our annual budget from our financial champions like you? As a nonprofit, we live on the financial edge every month. And guys, it's been rough in this economy, so I'd ask you to prayerfully consider becoming a monthly financial champion or offering up a one-time large gift. You can hit us up at Venmo at Men in the Arena. You can go to our website at meninthearena.org, and you can take it from there, guys. God bless you. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. grind it out and be a man.